Hello. Today I want to talk about the development of Finnish identity up to around 1900. For ease of recording, I will split the video into two parts. The first part dealing with the period up to about 1700, and the second with the 18th and 19th centuries. The sense of national identity is now a pervasive part of modern consciousness, with a large part of the world's population regarding their own national identity as an important part of who they feel themselves to be. This has not always been the case, however, and peoples in many parts of the world have only adopted national identities in the relatively recent past, providing both historians and sociologists with interesting case studies for their theories about how such transpersonal identities develop. I do not want to visit this now substantial body of writing at the present time, but I will make a few general basic comments before talking about the development of Finnish identity through to the end of the 19th century. First, most people naturally develop a sense of identity in relationship to their immediate families, but beyond this, various wider identities can develop. These include clan membership, with the clan being seen as an enlargement of the family, embracing a wider kin group, village and local region, dialect and language, religion, estate, occupational class, and nationality. Second, these identities may overlap, so that individuals define themselves in terms of several identity markers at the same time, or they may feel their identities to be in conflict. Third, the sense of identity may change over time, both for the individual and for a large number of people in a society together. Now, turning to the lands that comprise modern Finland, I see a number of these senses of identity interacting over time, with the national identity of being Finnish eventually coming to be of particular importance beyond the basic level of the individual and his or her immediate family. Crudely, I would divide the development of Finnish identity into four historical periods. First, a pre-modern period, up to perhaps the early 19th century, in which most people in Finland did not have a particularly Finnish identity, but thought of themselves primarily in terms of their localities, social estates, and religion. Second, and overlapping with the first, a period in which a developing Finnish national awakening became increasingly important. This began in the 18th century, but was of major cultural and political importance in the 19th century. Third, a period of attempted Russification from essentially 1899 to 1917, which powerfully reminded most Finns of their own distinctive cultural identity. And finally, the period of independence from 1917 onwards. I will deal only with the first two periods in this present video. The Finns entered the Western European historical consciousness during the 12th century, at the time of increasing missionary activity to establish the Roman Catholic Church in the lands that are now Finland. The Christian Kingdom of Sweden took the lead in this endeavour, and Swedish influences and later dominion came to play a major part in the subsequent development of the Finnish lands. Their main competitors were the Russians to the east, initially from the great city republic of Novgorod, and later from Muscovy. A treaty in 1323, known in Finnish as the Peace of Pakinasari, established a period of relative peace, although periodic conflicts between Sweden and Russia would continue to disrupt Finland up to the early 19th century. Under Swedish influence and rule, a basic Western division of society developed in Finland. The great mass of the people were Finnish-speaking peasants, whilst the ruling elite were comprised of a mixed aristocracy of Swedish, Finnish, and sometimes Danish and German descent. Along with the clergy and the city folk, the nobles and richer peasants constituted legally defined estates of the Swedish realm. Although often desperately poor, the peasants were not serfs. There were many Swedish speakers in the towns and in poorer communities along the Baltic coastlines. The population became almost entirely Catholic, although well into the 17th century, Finns and the nomadic Sami, or Lap herders to the north, had a reputation for pre-Christian beliefs and practices, and were stigmatized by the literate elite for their witchcraft and magic. The Reformation came to Sweden and Finland with the Swedish king Gustavus Vasa, who broke with Rome in 1524 over the right to appoint bishops and began confiscating church properties a few years later. Lutheranism was formally adopted as a state religion in 1593. The key agent in establishing Protestantism in Finland was Mikael Agricola, who had studied in Wittenberg under both Melanchthon and Luther, and saw the urgent need to translate at least the New Testament into Finnish, and in so doing transformed Finnish from a purely oral language into a literary one. His New Testament was published in 1548 and marks a crucial date in the creation of modern Finnish identity. He also published the first Finnish prayer book, liturgy, and catechism, as well as a simple language primer, which was the very first book printed in Finnish in 1543. He was appointed as Bishop of Abo, modern Turku, in 1554, shortly before his death. Agricola had begun work on translating the Old Testament, but a Finnish translation of this was not completed until 1642, by which date Lutheranism was firmly established. During the early 17th century, under King Gustavus Adolphus and his successors, a Swedish state bureaucracy became increasingly important, and in Finland this involved the increasing use of Swedish in most official activity, including government administration, law, and education beyond the primary level. Finnish began to be marginalized as the language of the peasants and common soldiers. Nevertheless, Per Brahe the Younger, twice Governor-General of Finland during the mid-part of the century, encouraged the use of Finnish, and both ensured that the Finnish translation of the Bible was completed and produced a Finnish grammar by which Swedish officials could learn the local language. He also effectively originated the idea of a Greater Finland, embracing the Finnic peoples of Russia, and promoted commerce, agriculture, and education in Finland, including the establishment of the Royal Abo Academy, Finland's first university, in 1640. Later in the century, under the absolutist King Charles XI, the Lutheran Church was charged with making the general population literate, with couples being refused the right to a church marriage if they couldn't read the catechism, for example. As a consequence, the Finns, along with the Swedes, became one of the most literate peoples in Europe. At the same time, there were attempts to further advance the role of Swedish in Finnish life, and membership of the Lutheran Church was made obligatory, along with the requirement to attend weekly church services. Thank you for listening. I will continue this account in part 2.